Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel, where we're continuing with some Inkulinati, and then we're going to roast some reactionary bullshit, as we always do. Okay. I've been learning a thing or two in the various times I've lost at Inkulinati, and that has led to me winning once so far. It is a remarkably tactical sort of game. Okay, first gonna get on that little ink blot. Love the sounds they make. Okay. A more comfortable position to sit in. This really is not the best setup for streaming, but I make it work. Okay, let's get rid of the archer first. Archer is the most dangerous. And let's see. I like to just spam as many archers as I can get. Because then I don't have to get in close. Makes life easier. Okay, that's one down. Shit. The apocalyptic fire has arrived. Ah, hell. think I'm about to lose this one. Noir, ¿cómo estáis? And Top Toast, the alewife. Okay, suddenly we have a totally new layout, and I'm kind of cool with that. Porque en la última configuración me sentía más o menos tan amparada como en una casa cupeva. Okay, and take him out. Add another archer. Ah, ¿dónde te encuentras ahora? Okay. Get rid of him. There we go. And that simplifies things a bit. Okay, and Donkey Fucker. Ándate, burro culiao. Ah, no sé. Creo que el próximo se va a producir como en el verano, más o menos. De hecho, no tengo ni idea, porque desde hace como 20 años que mi compu y todo mi dispositivo lo hacen automáticamente, así que yo no tengo que fijarme y no me fijo. Okay. Got myself a beast. Here we go. Hace la tarde repasando el derecho migratorio argentino. Ouch. Ok, a ver. Ah, no alcanza. Ah, sí, por este armario, culiao. Ah, bueno. Entonces a orar. Ah, ¿qué juego? Ah, bueno. Tiene varios motivos la weá. Primero porque una amiga mía, bueno, ya sabía que el derecho de identidad de género de Argentina, era de primera. Pero luego me dijeron que igual va la cosa con el derecho migratorio, así que decidí, bueno, darle una ojeada y resulta que sí. Sobre todo comparado con el chileno y con el estadounidense, es una mejoría pero sensible. Bueno, la única mejoría ulterior que se pudiera obrar sería, bueno, abolir toda esa weá de derecho migratorio y ciudadanía y fronteras bueno, de raíz. Pero si mientras haya un derecho migratorio, bueno, digamos que la versión argentina no está mal. Además, bueno, he pensado radicarme allá, tal vez, que me gusta Buenos Aires y además, bueno, tenemos una situación acá donde ya tenemos refugiado interno por, bueno, las leyes genocidas que se han promulgado en contra de la gente trans. Y bueno, mientras más se vaya expandiendo el territorio donde se ha criminalizado la mera existencia de la gente trans, bueno, más interesante se torna haciendo, bueno, la posibilidad de bueno, las posibilidades, bueno, en el exterior. Y ahí, bueno, la situación migratoria y la situación normativa en cuanto a cuestiones bueno, derechos de gente trans, identidad de género en Argentina, sí le... bueno, lo hace parecer bastante interesante en ese sentido. Y además, bueno, allá por lo menos saben lo que es al dente, weón. Buenos Aires es como la hermana grande más bacana de Santiago. Show me what you got. Okay. I can have one quill, or I can blow shit up. I think I'm gonna take a quill and a dog with a sword. Yeah, let's do that. El microcentro de Buenos Aires me recuerda a Nápoles. O, bueno, mejor dicho, Nápoles, cuando fui a Nápoles, que fue después de conocer Buenos Aires, me recordó el microcentro de, bueno, de Buenos Aires. Ok, ya va la cosa. Okay, let's see. Finally, I have all 5 slots filled. Okay, get myself an archer in there. Stick myself there, where I will occasionally have my health refreshed. Another archer. Get rid of that fucking barrel. And can I add something else? Yeah, okay, I'll take a dog with a sword. Why not? Sí. Bueno, te doy un ejemplo, bueno, de la diferencia favorable para Argentina que existe en lo migratorio desde una experiencia propia. Porque lo que pasa es la última vez que estuve en Chile, en el 2015. Resulta que había leído y malentendido la normativa relevante, llegando así a creer que podía pasar 180 días seguidos en el país sin prórroga ni nada, sin problema. Y luego llego al aeropuerto de mierda de Santiago y me detienen. Los ratis me llevan al sótano, me explican que no, que pasados los 90 días hay que solicitar la prórroga y weá. Y que por eso hay que pagar una multa. Pero la multa, por supuesto, no se puede pagar en el mismo aeropuerto, sino y ni siquiera se puede pagar ese mismo día, sino que al día siguiente hay que levantarse temprano y, bueno, primero hay que ir al Ministerio de Interior y esperar como 3 horas para pasar luego a Banco Estado, donde los weones, sí, sí, donde te sacan como 7 lucas por un puto vale vista. Y luego hay que ir donde, bueno, la policía de investigaciones, la jefatura de policía internacional, al otro lado del centro de Santiago, para, bueno, para regularizar la documental. Y lo que pasa es que en Argentina, eso de la multa por pasarse el plazo máximo, eso sí existe, pero ¿sabe cómo funciona allá? Lo que pasa es que allá, si no tenéis plata, si te olvidaste de pagar la multa, la tasa, ni siquiera se llama multa, sino simplemente tasa por estadía excesiva, lo que pasa es que te cobran la próxima vez que vengas al país. Te cobran la próxima vez que vengas al país. No, no supone impedimento alguno para irte, sino simplemente te van a cobrar la próxima vez. Que es una manera bastante caleta más, bueno, decente de hacer la cosa. Y eso de pasarse del plazo máximo además, eso se puede arreglar en Argentina en la página web de la Dirección Nacional de Migraciones. Sin ir a ninguna oficina, ni un sótano de ningún raticuleado, sino solamente hay que ir a la página web. Lo hacen, bueno, hacen bastante por, bueno, facilitar el proceso. Y, bueno, la tasa tampoco es mucha. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Y además lo que pasa es que allá, bueno, la normativa es más o menos la siguiente. Con tal de haber ingresado regularmente al país, todo lo demás se puede negociar. Porque en su constitución tienen un derecho a migrar. Existe un derecho a migrar y por eso, con tal de no cagarse al paso fronterizo, Cristo Redentor, y bueno, con tal de, bueno, llegar presentado el papeleo correspondiente en el momento correspondiente, etcétera, no importa, bueno, no importa, bueno, mientras no hagas ninguna cuestión penal, no importa. Hay alguna manera de regularizar la weá sin tener que irte. I mean, just a much better system. It's way better than here too. I mean, here is just an absolute fucking nightmare. Apart from everything else, it's like the longest immigration law I've ever seen. Apart from just being the nastiest, it is just long as hell. Like, it's thousands of pages of material you have to follow, and it's extremely complicated, and people can end up losing their status without knowing it. Because there are a million tiny details that could cause that to happen. And then the media, they're like, they act like, I mean, it's so easy to avoid being, illegally in the country, when in fact, it is really easy to find yourself illegally in the country even though you did everything right, because some random shit happens and now your visa doesn't apply and shit, and then, you know, you go in just to renew the stuff and no, not realizing that they're about to fucking arrest you. That happened to a guy I know. And that was actually, that turned out to be a misunderstanding. Fortunately, it was possible to sort that out, but I mean, so yeah. I mean, comparative immigration law is just sort of an area I like to pay attention to as well. Hey, hola Phoenix, ¿cómo estás? Just talking about basically the advantages of Argentina as a place for people trying to get away from this fucking persecution of trans people. And just how much fucking better the immigration law there is than here, and how much fucking better, like, their, like, gender identity law is probably one of the best in the world. I mean, Cuba has, like, probably eclipsed them to some extent. But, I mean, they're still way up there. They were putting in self-ID and, like, confidential name changes before anyone else was really doing it. Yeah, I mean, everything about the U.S. immigration system is made to be disheartening, confusing, frightening. I mean, the whole thing is just designed to be awful. It is designed to just make you reconsider whether you want to have anything to do with the U.S. I mean, and the worst part is, like, okay, if you were trying to get asylum in the U.S., which I do not recommend, like, seriously, it is a disaster. The whole system is a disaster. Have you seen that you have to sign a form confirming that you've never been a member of a communist party to get into the U.S.? Like, they make little kids sign that form too. That they've never been terrorists, they've never been in the Communist Party. And shit. Okay, hands, thorn fingers, healing explosions, that's a good one. And we got, healing. I like mass healing. And, okay. Cook exploder. Cook exploder is good because it makes things blow up. At a distance as well, so I was focused on training, get some extra living ink. Yeah, I mean, so if you're trying to get asylum in the U.S., first of all, you never get to see, like, a real judge. If you're in the immigration system, you never get to see a, like, legit real court ever, basically. You get to see immigration judges who are just employees of the Department of Justice and are under orders. Like, the Attorney General can say, yeah, don't accept anybody from, I don't know, Libya or something, and they just can't, you know, it doesn't matter if they think that that's bullshit from a legal standpoint, which it would be. They can't do anything about it because they're not real judges. And those people, who also have about 5 minutes to dedicate to each case based on the caseloads they have, those people, they are the closest thing to, like, an actual day in court that a refugee in this country ever gets. Because if you try to fight, if you have to fight that for some reason, what ends up happening, oh, that's really fucking nerf that fucking snail, you have to do what's called a petition for review. And the standard is, if there is, like, any evidence at all supporting whatever the fucking immigration service did, and there always is at least some, then you lose. And that's, like, the closest thing. I mean, the whole thing is just Kafka-esque. It's fucking evil. I mean, it amazes me that anyone would want... it amazes me that anyone even bothers to try to get in the legal way just because of the sheer amount of bullshit you have to go through. And the uncertainty of it. Oh god, yes. Oh, also, it turns out, you know how long it takes to get an Argentine passport? Oh god, downloaded music from Soulseek is a nice program. I'm a big fan of it. You can apply for citizenship in Argentina after living there for 2 years continuously. That's all it takes. 2 years, and you don't even necessarily strictly have to be there 100% legally for it. Like, you don't have to have there's something called autorización de residencia precaria. And it's a document you get from the immigration service there if, for some reason, it's taking too long for them to process your application. Whether it's your fault, whether it's somebody else's fault, for some reason it takes too long to process, and so you get this autorización de residencia precaria. And if you keep that for if you hold on to that for 2 years, under the Constitution of Argentina, you can get a passport from there. Yeah, free university. I mean, free university even, like, if you're online, too. I've actually considered, like, doing an online degree at the Universidad de Palermo. Just because of that. Because it would be nice to have, like, one degree to my name, since the only degree I have right now is I have, like, a master's in getting kicked out of university for political reasons. I wrote an open letter criticizing the university administration, and they just found an excuse to get rid of me after that. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you can do a law degree online at Universidad de Palermo in Buenos Aires. 100% online. And I mean, it's not totally free, but it's cheap. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it is despotic. The university system here is despotic as fucked. Oh god. I know the feeling. Like, when I see anything to do with UC, the fact that they fucked me over for just writing an entirely valid open letter criticizing their shitty administration. Yeah, it just absolutely just makes my blood boil. I bet. Wait, why can't my, like, cook exploder blow that guy up? I don't understand it. Okay, fuck. What did you study in Venezuela? Oh god, that sucks. I mean, that isn't really much to say. I mean, in fact, it kind of sucks as well. But yeah. Oh, come on. Oh, hey. Somebody's got to theorize art. Yes, very nice and smoothly done, and you incorporated it into a meme. You've managed to do all the important things in an example sentence in modern English. The meme incorporation is essential. Okay. And now it is time to fire up the Barbie and get the roast going. Vamos a hacer un pequeño asado de reaccionario. Full build. And let me just say, hello, Sampini. Welcome. And let me just say, my project, the crowdfunded translation project, is really going very nicely. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, I am nearly halfway to fully funding the translation, the first full-length translation of Kalantai's Socialnia Osnov Wyrzynskого Vaprosa, social basis of the female question. And the introduction's already available on the Patreon as a PDF. That's just the draft, though. God, that just... that is just demoralizing. Phoenix. Okay, I have some options here. Let me just adjust this crop. One thing, I've found an oldie but a goodie from PragerU. Did Bush lie about Iraq? At all. Then we've got... Let's see. Oh, let me just go and adjust the, A ver, just chatting. Y ahí estamos. Where are you joining us from, Sampini? Eldest daughter reparation sounds like a good idea. Okay, and then we've got some other stuff as well. We've got Vosh fawning over the State of the Union. Yeah. I mean, he did. And it'll be interesting. I'm kind of curious how the fucking PragerU tries to claim otherwise. Then I also pulled out... You remember we watched that thing with Caleb Maupin where we saw a very low quality video through his fucking mobile phone of one of these English language North Korean YouTube channels, and I thought that would be an interesting thing to look at, both in itself and as a way to talk about media analysis. And that was just so... I have a couple of those videos pulled up, if anyone's interested. But I think we're going to start out with, did Bush lie about Iraq? Oh, yeah, English language and lit's cool. I was also a Lang and Lit before I got kicked out on my ass. Ibero-American literature and German literature. See, the thing is, there was only one president, Bush. Bush 2 is just a fucking governor. He didn't, he managed to lose 2 consecutive elections. I mean, there's a book, people don't realize, outside of Ohio, how fucked up the 2004 election was here. How just blatantly the thing got manipulated. There's a great book that is just testimonies of human rights observers in Ohio called What Happened in Ohio. A friend of mine was an election observer and saw some wild shit. Not far from me here, you had the Warren County Board of Elections, and they decided during the vote count they were going to close up. They closed to the press and to, human rights observers, saying that the FBI had warned them of a fucking, of an impending terrorist attack. And so journalists actually called the FBI and said, so what's the deal here? And the FBI said, where the fuck's the Warren County Board of Elections? We never fucking heard of them. But by that time, the fucking vote had already been called for Bush. I mean, they did all sorts of shit like that. I mean, the whole idea was that they would fuck around with the margin. They wouldn't, outright flip a district one way or another. Oh, God. See, this is a reason I couldn't live in D.C. Because I would just be so tempted to scream at all those motherfuckers. Okay. Gonna start with, did Bush lie about Iraq? And, of course, the answer is yes.
I took America to war in Iraq.
Okay, who the fuck is she?
I took America to war in Iraq. It was all me.
Judith Miller. Yeah, she lied her ass off, and then she still had a fucking career afterwards. I like how she says that sarcastically, as if this is like what fucking crypto chuds do when people point out that the whole thing's a scam, and instead of trying to refute that, they'll just repeat it back to you. Oh, it's a scam, and everything like that somehow proves it isn't. That's what she's doing here. So Judith Miller, who lied her ass off.
Okay, it was mostly me. I had some help from a clueless President George W. Bush and...
Well, clueless? I don't... See, if he was clueless, I don't buy that. Because if you actually believed Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which the U.S. government demonstrably did not, more about that in a moment, you would never fucking attack them, because the only reason they'd have that shit is as a deterrent.
His neoconservative puppet master, Vice President Dick Cheney. Senior White House fanatics spoon-fed reporters like me cherry-picked intelligence about Iraq's alleged weapons of mass destruction, so...
Wait, she's just saying exactly what happened, but with a sarcastic tone. That's all she's doing here. She's just saying exactly what happened. Although she's managed to completely overrate her own role in the thing, because there were a lot of journalists, like the entire fucking media in this country, failed to question any of it. Nobody tried to fact-check anything, because that's not something the media in this country does, really.
That America could invade Iraq and seize its oil. None of this is true, but...
Wait, what bit are you going to claim isn't true? This should be wild.
Many Americans continue to believe it. People died. It was a war. But President Bush...
Well, yeah, it was a war that the U.S. started, which is called the crime of aggression. And people have actually gotten the death penalty for that shit.
...didn't lie us into it. The false narrative that he did is itself a lie, and
they decided... I love... This is what I love about PragerU. Instead of trying to find somebody who somehow managed to get through 2003 with their credibility intact, like maybe by not actually being active as a journalist yet, they pick one of the most notoriously dishonest people in the media at the time, who demonstrably knew she was lying. And she's the one who's going to exonerate Bush. Oh, have a good night. Buenas noches, Noir. Qué bueno verte de nuevo. Yeah, she's the one that they're gonna pick. This is some, like, Caleb Maupin shit right here.
Deserves to be at last retired. There was no shortage of mistakes about Iraq, and some of the media's pre-war WMD stories were wrong.
In fact, all of them were wrong, because Iraq didn't have them. In fact, let me just go back. Let me just show you something. This is Colin Powell's press remarks with Foreign Minister of Egypt, Amr Moussa, February 24th, 2001. Okay. Now, let's see. I've got to find the right section. Here we go. This is Colin Powell on the status of Iraq as military threat in 2001, before the push to invade Iraq, and thus the narrative that Iraq was this mortal threat to the world, started to come into form. He's talking here about the so-called sanctions against Iraq, which had killed over 1 million people by that point, just utterly genocidal. And he's saying that the sanctions, he says, and frankly, they have worked. He has not developed any significant capability with respect to weapons of mass destruction. He is unable to project conventional power against his neighbors. So, in effect, our policies have strengthened the security of the neighbors of Iraq. These are the policies that we are going to keep in place. So, what he's saying here is, yeah, he very clearly says Iraq doesn't have them. The only issue with weapons of mass destruction he even raises is Iraq's possible ability to acquire them. In other words, Iraq doesn't have them, and they don't even have conventional weapons sufficient to really make a difference. In other words, the U.S. government knew for a fact that Iraq was defenseless. And it amazes me that this press conference doesn't get mentioned more often. In fact, I'm going to bookmark it, because it took me a while to find this damn thing. Hey, not bad. We're learning from Judith Miller, the most credible source in the history of U.S. media, who's explaining how nobody lied about Iraq. And I was just showing him a press conference that Colin Powell gave in 2001, February 2001. So, like, 22 years ago last week, in which he specifically said Iraq doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, they don't even have conventional weapons. That was the official position of the U.S. until it became convenient to pretend otherwise.
Including some of mine.
She got caught literally just lying. She was just putting U.S. government propaganda unchanged into the fucking and call it journalism.
But so is the enduring pernicious accusation that the Bush administration fabricated WMD intelligence to take the country to war. Before the 2003 invasion, President Bush and other senior
why is he has like a mouth but no rest of his face? What is this Blue Man Group bullshit?
Officials cited the intelligence community's incorrect conclusions about Saddam's WMD capability.
Except the intelligence community's conclusions were actually right. Congress wrote, in the run-up to all this, Congress wrote a letter. There was no national intelligence estimate, which is like considered the gold standard in the intelligence community prior to the fucking invasion. But Congress decided they wanted to know, so they sent a letter to the intelligence community, said, what's your best guess on this stuff? and they said, we can't say for sure. We don't think that he's got weapons of mass destruction, but if he does have them, Saddam Hussein would only use them in response to something catastrophic like an invasion. And this was the view of the intelligence community before fucking Rumsfeld created the Office for Special Plans in order to find the most asinine and abstruse sources just to create the impression that there was actually a basis for any of this.
Abilities, and on occasion went beyond them. But relying on the mistakes of others, completely understandable mistakes given Saddam's horrendous record, and
the horrendous record being almost entirely at times when the U.S. was actively supporting him. I mean, the only WMD the motherfucker ever had were developed with U.S. support in the 1980s.
And making errors of judgment are not the same as lying.
Well, yeah, they're not the same as lying, but I mean, when you say, lying is when you say something and you know that it's not true. For example, now you could argue, and Noam Chomsky at the time said, maybe you can't really say Bush is lying because it's not really clear that he knows anything. But, yeah, the U.S. government clearly did not believe Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, or they would not have invaded. In fact, we have a controlled experiment, because around the exact same time, there was this brief period. So, I mean, North Korea in the 1990s had actually been trying to work out some kind of deal with the U.S. that, under a framework that was called the Agreed Framework, that was a Clinton idea, where they would be able to get, nuclear power fuel in exchange for, a verifiable commitment not to create nuclear weapons. That was the idea. And essentially, the U.S. invasion of Iraq made them decide that was absolutely not the way to go. And that was around the time that they started being very open and saying, yeah, we've got fucking WMD. Saddam Hussein's position was, yeah, we haven't got anything. Come look, send as many inspectors as you want. And Kim Jong-il at the time, and, his foreign ministry and his media, every time they gave a public statement, it was basically, yes, we fucking got WMD. Why don't you come and have a go at us and find out how many of them we've got? And there was this brief period in the media in the U.S. where, the fucking war hawks were all talking about, well, North Korea's on the axis of evil too, maybe we should do them too. And then the conclusion was, no, because if we attack them, they have weapons of mass destruction and their counterattack would be devastating. Because that's what it means when you have weapons of mass destruction. That's what a deterrent is. It means that you could fuck somebody up if they invade you. And that was exactly why the U.S. was never going to invade North Korea at the time. Because all they could be sure of is that they probably had at least a couple of them, and that's enough to fuck everything up. That's enough to take out Seoul or Honolulu or something like that, and they didn't want to chance it. Which is what the U.S. does when a country actually has weapons of mass destruction. What the U.S. does not do when a country actually verifiably has weapons of mass destruction is just fucking invade them. And to just find out. They don't FAFO with this.
European arms control experts, counterterrorism agents, and analysts who studied Iraq and
all came to the conclusion that Iraq did not have any weapons of mass destruction, which is why the U.S. was virtually alone in invading it. I mean, the only other country that sent any significant troop contingents was Britain.
Briefed White House officials and journalists were the same people who gave me and my fellow reporters at the New York Times accurate information for years.
Well, accurate by Judith Miller's standards, which we already know are special.
About Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda's growing threat to America. In fact, 8 months before 9/11, the Times published a series of articles on that threat, a series for which the Times staff, including me, won a Pulitzer Prize.
So what you're saying is that at some point before you decided to just completely throw all of your credibility away. You did some useful stuff, allegedly.
The members of the
How you doing,
intelligence
Ludlow?
community with whom I dealt were overwhelmingly reliable, hardworking, and honest.
Yeah, the thing is that you don't get a job like the one that Judith Miller pissed away without believing that the fucking, the fucking spy service employees whose entire job is to feed you bullshit actually are honest about it.
But they were also human. And in the aftermath of 9/11, they were very wary of ever again underestimating a terrorist threat.
It wasn't a terrorist threat they were even talking about. It was a fucking alleged WMD threat that didn't exist and that the intelligence community also said didn't exist the last time that they actually got to, give an unfiltered opinion on the subject.
There's an enduring myth that policymakers pressured intelligence analysts into altering their estimates to suit the Bush administration's push to war.
That's, see, another word for that kind of enduring myth is fact. There was a literal office set up by Donald Rumsfeld called the fucking Office of Special Plans, and the whole point of that was to cherry pick bullshit intelligence from sources who nobody actually took seriously, bypass the analysis process completely, because the whole point of having analysts is that they are supposed to look at the stuff that comes in and say, yeah, that sounds like bullshit to me. This guy's full of shit. This isn't something that we should be relying on. And the trouble is, when you're trying to concoct a bullshit case for something you've already decided to go ahead with, you kind of want the bullshit. In fact, it turns out, according to the lawyers of prisoners at Guantanamo concentration camp, one of the things that they were being forced to sign confessions and tortured into signing confessions was stuff that was supposed to link Iraq to WMD and Osama bin Laden. They were literally, the U.S. government at the time was literally pulling out all this, not literally, but pulling out all the fucking stops in order to get something that they could present to people in order to come up with some kind of justification.
Yet several thorough bipartisan inquiries found no evidence of such pressure.
Well, maybe that's because the fucking atrocity is bipartisan. I mean, there are places where a commission of inquiry in the legislature is actually valuable. The U.S. really is rarely one of them. Because especially when they're looking into some kind of crime that both parties were involved in, like the invasion of Iraq, they were never going to push too hard, because both parties, Democrats have dined out on having voted no the first time on Iraq for a really long time, but then every other time they voted to fund the fucking war, fund the occupation. So, yeah, there's absolutely no reason that those inquiries would find anything other than anything that would be embarrassing to, say, Hillary Clinton, for example.
What they reveal instead is that bad intelligence led to bad policy decisions. The 2005 commission, headed by former Democratic Senator Charles Robb and Republican Judge Lawrence Silberman, called the intelligence community's estimates on Iraq dead wrong.
Wow, that is a really controversial. They were really sticking their fucking heads out the window in 2005 to say that. But the thing is, the intelligence, before the Office of Special Plans, the intelligence community got it right. Just like basically everybody else in the world got it right. That it didn't make sense. Like Colin Powell got it right in 2001. Clearly, they knew that Iraq was defenseless, or they wouldn't have done what they did. Santa Fe is in New Mexico?
A year earlier, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence denounced such intelligence failures as the product of groupthink, rooted in a fear of underestimating grave threats to national security in the wake of 9/11.
Yeah, except again, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence is all people who are never going to fundamentally question anything that goes on with the intelligence community, and everybody in there was fully committed to keeping that war going, and any findings that might rock the boat were not welcome.
Will Toby, a former deputy administrator for the National Nuclear Security Administration, still fumes about the failure to see problems in the CIA's intelligence that supported Secretary of State Colin Powell's pre-war speech at the
That would be the speech that he actually was heard by one of his aides to say, like the eve of giving the speech to the UN. He said, I can't tell these people this, it's bullshit." He eventually overcame that because, I mean, you don't get to become a Secretary of State without being able to tell people things that you find that you're ashamed to say because they're just such obvious lies. In fact, I mean, one of the things, if you read the foreign press at the time, you read the European press, there were all sorts of interviews with weapons inspectors about the stuff that he presented in that bullshit speech at the UN. And they were all pointing out they investigated these sites and there was nothing to it. It was complete nonsense.
United Nations about Iraq's WMD. Based partly on the CIA's assurances of strong evidence for each claim, Mr. Powell was persuaded that the case against Saddam was...
No, he wasn't persuaded. He very clearly wasn't persuaded.
In his words, rock solid. Why wouldn't he?
Because it was bullshit, and he knew it was bullshit, and said so in 2001. That's why he wouldn't. He knew, I mean... That's why he would. It was, there's a reason. See, this is why the U.S. has to be a bubble. This is why the entire propaganda system in this country is dependent on the U.S. being a bubble. Because if you know anything about the state of discussion in the rest of the world at the time, even in countries in the imperial core like, Germany or France or, just any place in Europe, really, what you find is everybody was pointing out that there was that none of this stuff held water. Everybody was pointing out that it made no sense. The weapons inspectors were saying it was bullshit. Even in the US, only about half the population ever bought into this shit. And that's despite basically 100% of the media selling it. I mean, the only thing I can think comparable to the way in which the U.S. media sold the Iraq WMD lie was the way Britain's media currently are selling TERFs.
Over the previous 15 years, none of the congressional committees routinely briefed on Iraq's WMD assessments expressed concern about bias or error.
Yes, because the thing is that those assessments... They also didn't express concern about WMD because the assessments repeatedly said, yeah, it doesn't look like Iraq has any, and there's no reason to think that they would ever use it offensively.
The decision to go to war in Iraq received broad support in Congress from both Republicans and Democrats.
I wonder if that's part of why both parties have shown no interest in seriously talking about how that war got sold.
And again, for good reason. Even if the intelligence community overestimated Saddam Hussein's WMD capability.
Overestimated is doing a lot of work here. I mean, his capability was zero. And the funny thing is, again, the U.S., there's no way the U.S. would have invaded if it was non-zero. Because Iraq is famously within conventional missile range of Israel. During the first Gulf War, Iraq actually fired a few off that detonated over Israel. You think the U.S., considering how important Israel is to U.S. control of that region, would be doing anything? That Saddam, if he had them, that's exactly what he would do, because that's exactly what he did in the first Gulf War. Except that he didn't have them then. He just used fucking conventional Scud missiles. So, obviously, Nobody seriously believed this.
It didn't create it out of thin air.
Yes, it
Saddam
did.
had used chemical weapons on his own people.
Yeah, guess who supplied those weapons?
Killing thousands. He had invaded his neighbors repeatedly.
With whose support again? What country gave him the green light to do actually both of those?
No, President Bush did not take America into a war because he was strong-armed by a neoconservative cabal.
Well, I don't really hear many people claim that Bush was strong-armed. If anything, the usual line of people who try to make it, about Bush's personality is that he was trying to avenge his father because he tried to kill my dad. And it's like, yeah, fuck you, man. It's too bad he didn't fucking succeed, honestly.
As President Bush himself famously asserted, he was the decider.
Yeah, exactly. She's acting like she's bringing up some sort of alternative account, but just about every account I know of that focuses on Bush's personality focuses on the fact that he was one of the driving forces behind this.
And no, he didn't go to war for oil.
Yeah, that was actually the only fucking thing. The only ministry that the U.S. actually had provided security for in all of Iraq when they invaded was the oil ministry. They immediately put that under U.S. control.
If we wanted Saddam's oil, we could have bought it.
Yeah, except if you wanted to buy it off of him, you'd actually have to pay the fucking rates.
President Bush's decision to go to war was based on the information that he and his team relied on.
No, it wasn't. Well, yeah, actually, no, wait a second. That is actually a true statement, but it just doesn't mean what you're supposed to think it means. It's a true statement. It is based on the information they relied on. And the idea is, the false implication is that they relied on the same information they gave to us, which is fucking bullshit.
Information that was collected by the world's top agents and analyzed by the world's
Mr. Anderson,
top analysts, including...
Yeah, specifically not the world's top analysts, because the whole process that the OSP, the Office of Special Plans created by Donald Rumsfeld, used bypassed the analysts.
The intelligence agencies of France, Germany, and Russia.
Actually, the intelligence agencies in question specifically said the sources that the U.S. was trying to rely on for this WMD crap were unreliable, which is why Germany, France, and Russia all disagreed with the U.S. on the WMD thing.
Countries whose leaders did not support going to war.
Well, yeah, they did, and they actually very specifically said that they did not see any support for the U.S. claims about WMD or the idea that Iraq was any kind of imminent threat.
But they all agreed on one thing. Saddam had and was continuing to develop WMD.
No, they didn't. They very specifically did not agree on that. They were very vocal. That's like a fucking Bushism. I've invented a Bushism. They were very vocal about not agreeing with that.
Our intelligence professionals and those of major European countries overestimated Saddam's capabilities.
I love how she's decided to shift the blame to European intelligence services who warned the CIA, warned the U.S. intelligence community that these sources the U.S. was asking him to dig out of the broom closet were completely full of shit. Unreliable, just complete fantasists.
Mistakes like that filter through the system, from the White House to Congress to journalists to the public.
And yet, so she's saying they believe that Saddam Hussein had a WMD deterrent, and yet they still invaded. Also, why is the sound person here got a skull and crossbones shirt on? What's that deal?
And those mistakes impact policy. But here's the key thing to remember.
The key thing to remember is that this is Judith Miller, like the one fucking journalist who got held accountable for publishing just absolute, demonstrably false propaganda about the war. About Iraq. She was the one who got held accountable because she wasn't slick enough with her shit, basically.
They were mistakes, not lies.
Well, what about your lies, though, Judith? Because it seems like your employer kind of thought they were lies.
I'm Judith Miller, contributing editor of City Journal for Prager University.
Yeah, that already says everything, because she was at the New York Times for a long time, and now she's the contributing editor of what the fuck is City Journal. Now, let me just... Oh, wait a second, the fucking... the press con... let me just kind of pause again and... annoying. Yes, here we go. I just want to... emphasize this, just to make sure that everybody who's watching sees this. This is Colin Powell in 2001, February 24th, so like a week ago, 22 years ago, talking with the foreign minister of the U.S. puppet dictatorship in Egypt about how the genocidal sanctions of Iraq had resulted in Iraq being defenseless, unable to project conventional power, and the only question that was in Colin Powell's mind at that point was whether he had the ability to acquire WMD. There was no question of him having them, because the sites, all these fucking sites where he had previously had them, were under the control of these inspectors, and they were systematically destroying the shit. So there we go. So that's, wow, I mean, I did not know that this was going to be such a celebrity bullshit artist for this one. But here we go. Let's say we've still got some time. So, what does everyone want to see? Because we want to see State of the Union 2023 with Foch. Do you want to see one of these English language North Korean vlogs about the new housing construction and talk about source analysis? Do we want to look at PragerU talking about Palestinians with Israeli passports and calling them Arab Israelis? Or there's Timcast IRL, Rockstar says he was fired from major band for supporting Trump, and Donald Trump vows to bring back guillotines and public executions. Any preferences in there? And yes, Hex Cheney, Phoenix. Hex Cheney really hard. It is fucked up that Cheney is still, after everything, like... how the fuck is he still with us? That's even more fucked up than Kissinger. Okay. I should note that there are a couple of Vosh options here. Oh, well, let's see. But I'm kind of leaning towards the State of the Union one. I feel like that's gonna be wild. It occurs to me that Vosh is sort of the sound of a public toilet flushing. One with good water pressure.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, good to see you guys up there. Members of Congress.
Who gives a shit?
Shouldn't the president be higher than anyone else? That's how it's worked. The patriarch in charge says above everyone. Well, the point is that he's not doing that. The idea is that he's here accountable to Congress, and he's being brought here to give the State of the Union address. Not like he's in charge here. That's the reason why he's being introduced by them. You know, it's like you're being brought here to be held accountable to the work you're doing and the state of the nation, not like you're here to be in charge.
Yeah, which is really funny because there's basically, I mean, I love the idea that this is supposed to be anything to do with fucking accountability. I mean, maybe theoretically that was originally the idea. But, yeah. I mean, this is just they suck up. It's a whole suck up that nobody actually expects anything new to happen in the fucking Oh, I did not know that history. Thank you, Phoenix. Thank you for telling me about this. Is there any place I can read more about that? I mean, nobody is being given new information. There's no transparency going on in the State of the Union. It is just a ritual where these people just fucking self-fillet for 2 hours.
Good idea.
By the way, Chief Justice, I may need a court order. She gets to go to the game tomorrow, next week. I have to stay home. Got to work something out here.
Who gives a shit?
Members of the Cabinet, leaders of our military, Chief Justice, Associate Justice, and retired Justice of the Supreme Court, and to you, my fellow Americans. You know, I start tonight by congratulating 118th
Yeah, God.
Congress, and the new Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy.
Yes, like the dickhead who lost 11 times before he finally managed to.
It is too long.
Speaker, I don't want to ruin your reputation, but I look forward to working with you. And I want to
how that's not ruining McCarthy's reputation so much as reminding us of his reputation, because the people he worked the closest together with in his half fucking century in Congress were people like fucking Jesse Helms, Trent Lott, Strom Thurmond, the fucking Jim Crow caucus. The most openly segregationist Republicans. Those were his closest associates. Oh, fucking Vosh is eating it up. Of course he is.
Congratulate the new leader of the House Democrats, the first African-American minority leader in history, Hakeem Jeffries.
For the first time.
Whose Twitter account is they crossed in Spirobot with those horrible fucking fundraising emails, of which I get 20 every day.
An African-American is a minority. Mr. Jeffries, congratulations on being the first black minority.
Oh, fuck you, this is just such incisive commentary from Bush. It is such incisive commentary here. I mean, he's just really showing that he's bringing that leftist analysis.
He won in spite of the fact I
God, not a fucking mask in the room.
Campaign for him. Congratulations to the longest-serving leader in the history of the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell. Where are you, Mitch?
Fuck that.
Wow. He's not. That's the best camera angle we have for Mitch. There we go.
And congratulations to Chuck Schumer, another term as Senate Minority Leader. About that much bigger.
Yeah, I mean, just rub it in that these motherfuckers basically have life appointments.
He's going to be considered the greatest speaker in the history of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi.
That's based on the fact that, how much the other one sucked. Her ability to wear fucking kente cloth and read a racist poem every single time rather than actually doing anything. Anything useful, I mean. Or man, her skill at insider trading.
It's gonna be, agonizing to listen to him talk, man. He's like... Oh my god. There's more adrenochrome
than... The story of America is a story of progress and resilience.
I thought it was the story of imperialism and genocide, but you do you.
Of always moving forward, of never ever giving up. It's a story...
Even when they really, really ought to.
Unique among all nations.
No, the U.S. is just a fucking knockoff of the British Empire.
We're the only country that has emerged from every crisis we've ever entered stronger than we got into it.
That is not
true. Look, folks.
Yeah, okay. Wow, okay. Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but Foch is right. I mean, it's true. Also, let's just not talk... The reason this is immediately, causing fucking brain melt for me is that what we have, and especially in the past, decade, it has accelerated. There's this crisis to new normal pipeline where something will be an existential crisis, because it literally is an existential crisis that is, life and death issue for millions and millions of people, or in some cases, the entire fucking planet. And, people, the political class and the fucking media will be like, yeah, we gotta do something about this, and then nothing really gets done. Maybe they pretend to do something about it, and then it's like, okay, yeah, this is the new normal, you just gotta get used to it. Yeah, it's just, this is how it is. That's climate change, that's fucking SARS too. That's, the way that the economy just, for most people, never bounced back. After the fucking financial meltdown in 2008. Oh, a cabinet-banging cat. I used to have one of those.
That's what we're doing again. 2 years ago, the economy was reeling. I stand here tonight after we've created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs.
On paper. See, the way that works is that they pretend that the people who are kicked off unemployment, that's the same as them getting jobs.
More jobs created in 2 years than any president's created in 4 years, because of you all, because of the American people. 2 years ago...
God, I mean, and this is just the only thing they'll do, just creating jobs. Fuck jobs. The jobs suck. Even to the extent that jobs have actually been created, they suck. The pay is inadequate. I mean, what's the point? I mean, why not actually do something useful? If you know what you create when you put a fucking brick through a window, you're creating jobs. It is not hard to create jobs. It's not a fucking achievement.
And 2 years
it's
ago,
not a good thing, even.
COVID had shut down. Our businesses were closed. Our schools were robbed of so much.
And yeah, and if we'd actually stuck with that, maybe we would not be the fucking COVID capital of the world now. 5% of the world's population, 23% of the COVID.
Today, COVID no longer controls our lives.
Bullshit. That is such bullshit. Okay, let's see. Is Vosh going to call him out on that?
And 2 years ago, democracy faced its greatest threats in the Civil War. And today, though bruised, our democracy remains
We did it. We overcame COVID.
Is that going to be the extent of his pushback on that bullshit?
We did it. COVID's done.
Like, is he okay? Is he? I mean, is he actually like acknowledging that actually that's not true, or what is he even doing?
Congratulations.
We're writing the next chapter in the great American story, a story of progress and resilience.
And as it is with the chapters of U.S. history, first we start by completely erasing and rewriting the previous chapter so that we can retcon our way into whatever we need to be in.
When world leaders ask me to define America, and they do, believe it or not, I can define it in one word, and I mean...
No, actually, I don't believe it. I don't believe anyone asks him to define America. I think they're much more likely to ask him to keep his hands in his pockets.
Possibilities. We don't think anything is beyond our capacity. Everything is a possibility.
Nobody asks him to define America.
Democrats and Republicans can't work together.
Fuck you, Vosh. You don't get to... You don't get to take the piss out of that one. You didn't say anything meaningful about the COVID thing.
Over the past 2 years, we proved the cynics and naysayers wrong. Yes, we disagreed plenty. And yes, there were times when Democrats went alone.
Well, yes, they mostly just abandoned the people who voted for them and found a million excuses not to do a goddamn thing. And then got really shocked when the fucking midterm result wasn't as bad. They were, they're totally, fully expecting to be swept out of it. And somehow, the fear of the Republicans was enough to overcome the disgust at the Democrats' refusal to do anything to protect trans people, anything to protect abortion rights, anything to protect any of the fucking... Because remember those existential crises that we're not supposed to... I bet he's not even going to mention that shit.
But time and again, Democrats and Republicans came together to defend a stronger and safer...
Yeah, they came together, and it was us they were fucking.
For Europe.
Oh my God!
It came together to pass once in a generation infrastructure law.
Yeah, which is a complete disaster, and they continued to claim that it was going to massively reduce poverty, even though they got rid of the provisions that were going to reduce poverty.
Bridges connecting our nation and our people. We came together to pass the most significant law ever, helping victims exposed to toxic burn pits. And in fact, it's important. And in fact, I signed over 300 bipartisan pieces of legislation since becoming president.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Because you didn't need any Republican votes for anything for the first 2 years, more or less, and you could have actually done some useful things. The minute you hear the words bipartisan, you just know it sucks.
From reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act.
I maintain, by the way, that the insistence on promoting bipartisanship in an era where the Republican Party is unabashedly fascist and openly planning to undo democracy is a form of collaborationism.
Yeah, and you're the one who fucking said that leftists had to vote for this guy, Vosh. I mean, seriously, what does it mean? Okay, if that's collaborationism, and I would agree, it is. I mean, there are all sorts of ways that you can fucking shut down, bring legislative proceedings to a screaming halt. If you want to just completely prevent an opposing party from doing stuff. There are all sorts of ways. The procedures always include some kind of techniques. The Republicans can always find them when they're in the minority, but somehow when the Democrats are not entirely... When the Democrats are on the back foot, they somehow never notice them. But, so, yeah, it is collaborationism. But Vosh, you were the one who tried to get out the vote for this guy, whose entire career has been collaborationism. And you claimed that was somehow anti-fascism. Fuck you, man.
If things progress the way I think they will, history will remember Biden and the Democrats alongside fucking Hindenburg.
That's great. And that's a wonderful historical analogy, because liberals in Germany in 1933, the people, the historical equivalents of Vosh, the Voshes of their day, were saying, vote for Hindenburg. He's not great, but at least he'll keep out Hitler. And, yeah, so Hindenburg gets in, and the first thing he does is make Hitler chancellor. Vosh is the vote Hindenburg fucking guy.
In terms of just, like, paving the way.
So how is history going to remember you, motherfucker?
The Electoral Count Reform Act, the Respect for Marriage Act that protects the right to marry the person you love. And to my Republican friends, if we could work together the last Congress, there's no reason we can't work.
What's the alternative, though? Just locking up the dumb fucks? Yes! Yes, as a matter of fact, yes. Sedition is a real crime. And you could do that. Or...
This is just fucking fantasy. All this talk about, I mean, it's true, yeah, there are all sorts of legal grounds you could potentially use, and in fact, remember, in the U.S., ever since George W. Bush, you don't need a warrant, you don't need legal grounds to arrest a person, even a U.S. citizen on U.S. territory. José Padilla set that precedent by being abducted as a U.S. citizen on U.S. territory by the U.S. military to be tortured for 4 years with no credible justification. So, yeah, there are all sorts of... You could spin all sorts of fantasies about what this guy would do if he were that guy. But he isn't that guy. This isn't that regime. The only way that any of this stops is if we organize to stop it. And it's not going to be from fucking marching. It's going to be by being ungovernable. When it comes to any kind of protest... You either disrupt profitability, disrupt governability, or both of those things, of course, or it might as well not have fucking happened.
If you want a nice middling centrist road to take, he could say, like, hey, despite constant Republican obstructionism, who have maliciously banned every single bill we tried to get through.
No, they haven't. They weren't in a position to block the bills that he was trying to get through until, like, just now. Until the new Congress, after the midterms got sworn in, the Republicans have not been the obstacle. In fact, the Democrats haven't even been pretending the Republicans were the obstacle. That's why first it was the fucking parliamentarian, and then it was the fucking Mansion Cinema pack, who supposedly there was no possible leverage to use against either of them to push through this agenda that Biden really, really wanted, but just couldn't figure out a way to get two fucking two-bit unpopular members of his party on side.
Including this act and this act and this act, which all would have helped Americans, we managed to, of our own will, do some good stuff. But no, instead we have to promote this bipartisanship bullshit. As though there are any middle-of-the-road people or Republicans who are going to hear this and go, ah, well, I was all in favor of Ron DeSantis building the death camps, but...
Yeah, except that's not what the bipartisan shit is about. The bipartisan shit is about the fact that Democrats and Republicans agree on most of this horrible shit. It's why the concentration camps didn't go away. It's why they were never liberated. It's why fucking Guantanamo is still a concentration camp and that not everybody has been freed from there yet. It's why all of this stuff is still going on. And bipartisanship is just, since bipartisanship doesn't really exactly get the population excited, what they mostly do is they have a fake-ass crisis, like this bullshit about the debt ceiling. And let me just tell you why that's bullshit, just quickly, just in case anyone doesn't know, doesn't remember the last time they pulled this shit back under Obama. The debt ceiling is not about new indebtedness. It isn't about taking on new debt. It is about servicing existing debt. And the thing about existing debt is that under the U.S. Constitution, Section 4 of the 14th Amendment, the U.S. literally cannot default on any sovereign debt. It is a constitutional impossibility. This has nothing to do with any new spending, and if the U.S. ever even threatened to default, all the fucking creditors who have seriously deep pockets, as you have to be like any kind of major creditor of the U.S., that could just go to court and they'd get their money, because at as a last resort, the U.S. has the authority. The U.S. government can direct the mint to mint coins in literally any denomination, and that's legal tender, and it's considered satisfaction of the debt. And a court could order them to do that because of Section 14 of the 14th Amendment. So the whole thing's bullshit. And the reason they do this bullshit, I'm sure most people in chat, if not all, know, is that they need the crisis in order to justify going bipartisan on some shit that they know that is extremely unpopular with the population. Like cuts to fucking Medicare or Medicaid, like attacks on fucking Social Security, like all sorts of shit like that.
Now I'm actually totally swayed by the neutrality and blandness of Joe Biden.
You seemed to be a few months ago.
Together and find consensus on important
Keppel's
things.
Right.
In this
Hello,
Congress as
Keppel.
well. I think.
And Kepsters, Wigglers.
You all are as formed as I am, but I think the people send us a clear message. Fighting for the sake of fighting. Power for the sake of power. Conflict.
Oh god, it's the same fucking clear message they claim to have heard every single time. The people have sent this message of everybody loves bipartisanship. No, they fucking haven't. He has people whose entire job is to read the polls. They know how unpopular this shit is. But it is a useful lie.
For the sake of conflict gets us nowhere. That's always been my vision of our country, and I know it's many of yours.
What, nowhere?
Restore the soul of this nation, to rebuild the backbone of America, America's middle class, and to unite the country. We've been sent here to finish the job, in my view.
Finish what job? First of all, define the middle class. Most people can't, because the term in the U.S. it literally applies to every income bracket. There have been middle-class tax cuts passed by the Democrats that actually apply to the top 10% by income in this country. The whole thing, it is such a bullshit term, and it is used very specifically because it means nothing.
For decades, the middle class has been hollowed out in more than, and not no one administration, but for a long time.
What?
Too many.
Yeah, so, for decades, that would include, like, as successive governments from your party, including one that you were vice president in.
Good paying manufacturing jobs move overseas. Factory.
And when they talk about bringing manufacturing jobs back, that is never good news. Because the way that they do that, the whole idea is to get manufacturing workers to get paid so little, and it's already pretty close, that the margin on the shipping costs makes all the difference. It's not about anything that would cut into these companies' profits. It's about the fact that wages have been stagnating in real terms for so long that it's gotten to the point where a lot of the time they might as well just have the stuff made here because the labor is nearly as cheap.
Closed down. Once thriving cities and towns that many of you represent became shadows of what they used to be.
And the unions, remember the strike you busted? I remember.
Oh, wow, okay. Worst person you know has totally valid point.
It only just happened.
On the way, something else we lost.
Yeah, was this before or after the fucking East Palestine derailment due to the fucking unsafe conditions that led to the rail unions going on strike and him to bust
Pride,
them?
our sense of self-worth. I ran for president to fundamentally change things.
No, he didn't. He specifically, his whole slogan was nothing. It was literally nothing will fundamentally change. He didn't. Where the hell is he even getting this?
To make sure our economy works for everyone, so we can all feel that pride in what we do. To build an economy from the bottom up.
That's not how pride in what you do works. Pride in what you do depends on what it is you're actually doing.
Up in the middle out, not from the top down. Because when the middle class does well, the poor have a ladder up, and the wealthy still do very well. We all do well.
Well, why should there be poor people?
Keep in mind this is sped up.
I have to say, I have a lot of criticisms of Bernie Sanders, but I'd be wearing a fucking mask if I were in there, and that's actually looks like a quality one. That's ear loops, so it's KN95. But it's nice to see somebody actually acknowledging that COVID exists as this dickhead is up there saying that it doesn't. And with that, it is time for me to call it a night. Thank you to everyone who's joined. It's always lovely to see you. And if you enjoyed the stream, please consider supporting the stream by following on Twitch, liking and subscribing on YouTube if you haven't already, dropping me a direct contribution in my tip with the tip command, which will also go towards the crowdfunded translation of Inkulinati's social basis of the female question, which is proceeding apace. All of that is very much appreciated, and if you can't, you can't, and that is very much understood, because the situation in the society currently sucks, and everything is ridiculously expensive, and so I would not want anyone to feel pressurized to do it. But those who do, it is appreciated that much more, knowing what a fucking situation that everybody's in at the moment. Well, apart from, the people in his fucking tax bracket. Have a good night.